and gentlemen, we can now continue our morning session. Now we're going to hear a presentation by Mr. Ikubaje, and we will start with Mr. John Ikubaje, who is a specialist of human rights and governance issues at the Political Affairs Department of the African Union Commission. Mr. Ikubaje is also one of the technical experts at the Human Rights and Transitional Justice Department, which coordinates the 2016 AU program with emphasis on the rights of women. He is the author of many books on democratic governance and human rights. Prior to his current position, Mr. Ikubaje worked with the Advisory Board of the African Union on Corruption, as well as the USAID, the International Development Ministry of the UK, and the Center for Democracy and Development in the field of governance and human rights in Nigeria. Mr. Ikubaje, it is with a lot of pleasure that we are handing on the floor to you. Over to you, Mr. Ikubaje.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And let me first, on behalf of the African Union Commission, thank the organizers of this important meeting for the opportunity, for the invitation to the African Union Commission to make a presentation on its work, its advocacy on the issues of Palestine. My intervention will be a little bit different from the others. Why others has looked at the situation, gave the narratives of the situation in Palestine. My intervention will focus more on what has been the role of the African Union with regards to the issues of human rights violation in Palestine. Let me start by indicating that in Africa, there are two levels of intervention with regards to what is happening in Palestine. The first one is at the bilateral level, where individuals, countries engage with Palestine. And the second level is that at the multilateral. So I will focus more with regards to the work that the Africa is doing at the multilateral representing the African Union. Let me first thank the organizers and also especially the government and the people of Senegal for hosting this important meeting. The fact that the Senegal is hosting this meeting is an indication of African commitment, and particularly African as individual country, also as a continental body, as African Union. So you can see that the fact that the Senegal is hosting this event shows how the issues of Palestine is important to the people of Africa. As some of you may be aware, what is known as African Union is made up of 54 independent African Union member states. And Senegal happened to be one of the formidable members of the African Union. And so the solidarity in support of the people of Palestine did not start today. Some of you that are familiar with the history of Africa, particularly during the Organization of African Unity that was established in 1963, the issue of Palestine has been an issue in African Union agenda over decades. And it has been a fight and support to ensure that its liberation on the Palestine. As some of you may be aware, and to affirm the importance and support of the African Union with the cause of Palestine, on a yearly basis, African Union have what is called its summit. We organize our summit twice in a year. The first summit takes place in January and the second one in June or July. This summit brings together all African Union member states where they deliberate on issues of significance. And one is that usually they used to allow or permit individuals from across the world to address the African Union policy-making organs. And the president of Palestine, like my commissioner did mention yesterday, has been one of the important dignitaries that has addressed the African Union policy-making organs on the issues of Palestine. So this is to tell you how important the question of Palestine is to us at the continental level and also as an individual African member state. Now, why is the question of Jerusalem a concern to the African? You may be asking, is it probably because of the issues of morality? It goes beyond that. And that is the reason why, when you look at the African Union, we have different normative frameworks that guide the work that we do. And in addition to the United Nations Universal Declaration on Human Rights, which majority of our member states have ascribed to, the African Union also have what is called the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. And when you look at the provisions of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, it talks about, preventing and combating the issues of human rights violation. It also talks about international partnership with regard to protection and promotion of human rights. So that is one angle. We have it as a legal basis that we must partner with countries like Palestine with regards to ensuring that there is protection and promotion of human rights in the country. Now, I think one of the things that is also prominent with the African foreign policy objective is that one of our core foreign policy objectives is solidarity for social, economic, and political justice. And this does not only take place at the level of the continent, it goes beyond the continent. And I think I have some of my people at the podium here and some of the member states who will also understand better than me why, even though I was still young, during the apartheid in South Africa, colonialism in Namibia, African Union member states have this ideology of mobilizing among themselves to support and to combat colonialism and apartheid. And that was the reason why you see different countries across the continent, Senegal, Nigeria, Ghana, and so many other countries, contributed not only morally, but also financially to combat, apartheid in South Africa, colonialism in Namibia, and other countries. And in 1994, we overcome that challenge of, foreign dominations of the country where the apartheid was put to an end on the continent. So, in addition to the fact that we have this collaboration, solidarity within the continent, we also extend this beyond the continent. And that is one of the justifications, and in addition to the promotion and protection of human rights in the Universal Declaration. And that is the reason why the issues of Palestine is of priority and of significant importance to the African Union. Now, like I said, I will not go too much because of our time to some of this specific normative framework that we have in place. But I will just quickly make reference to the Charter of the Organization of African Unity that came into force in 1963. There is a specific provisions that provide that the objective of the then organization was to eradicate all forms of colonialism from the continent of Africa and to promote international cooperation, having due regard to the Charter of the United Nations and Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And from our own humble evaluations of the works of the organization, the then Organization of African Unity, if you look at the objective, the purpose why the Organization of African Unity was established, majority of the purpose has been accomplished. And that was the reason why there was a paradigm shift in time of the restructuring of the organizations, when we now have, the African Union in 2000. And the essence was to argue, to say that, yes, we have overcome the challenge of colonialism, foreign domination, and what we need to do now is to add the issues of good governance, economic development, and that was the paradigm shift from the Organization of African Union to that of African Union. And the provisions that enables the African Union to also support international solidarity in promotion and protection of human rights was also incorporated into the African Charter of the 2000. So in time of the legal basis, there is a legal foundation why the African Union see the reason why it must engage and solidarize with the people of the Palestine. I haven't said that. Now, what are the core roles of the African Union with regard to its solidarity and also ensuring that there is promotion and protection of human rights in Palestine? What have we been doing? The first thing is that the issue of Palestine and the Middle East is of priority to the African Union. And that is the reason why the Department of Political Affairs of the African Union is saddled with the responsibility to ensure that it follows critically and notes everything that is happening with regard to the Palestine and the Middle East. So on a yearly basis, the units of human rights and transitional justice ensure that they study everything and they take report. They have a comprehensive report with regard to what is happening in the Middle East and Palestine. And these are the issues that the report covers. One is the political and peace processes in Middle East, particularly in Palestine, the situation of the city of Jerusalem, the apartheid wall and colonial settlements, the Palestinian prisoners, and the conditions in the occupied territories. So usually this is what the report used to contain. And at the end of the day, we make this presentation on the state of Palestine and Middle East to the African Union policy-making organs for consideration and decision. So at the level of the African Union, they look at the report that has been prepared on a yearly basis. And at the end of the day, the policy-making organs, some of you that are familiar with the African Union, structures, you will know that we have different policy-making organs, starting from what we know as what is referred to as the permanent representative committees. Those are the ambassadors of different African Union member states that represent member states in Addis Ababa, where the headquarters of African Union is. We also have the Executive Council that is made up of the foreign affairs ministers of different member states, and also the Assembly of Head of State and Government that's made up of the different head of states of the African member state. All these organs usually deliberate and discuss on the reports that is being submitted by the headquarters of the African Union Commission. And at the end of the day, they take decisions on the issues of Palestine. Now, what happened to this decision is that the African Union policy-making organs usually issues a declaration on the state of Palestine. And the outcome of this report is transformed into a declaration. And in addition to that, a follow-up is also made on this declaration, and is to ensure that there is international advocacy and campaign for human rights on Palestine in different fora. Because of our time, let me just say that what are some of the things that we think are the way forward with regard to the issues of Palestine is that, as some of you may know, one of the aspirations and the goals of the African Union is to speak with one voice at international fora. So our intention and our aim is to ensure that Africa as a continent will speak with one voice by promoting, the issues of human rights and ensure that there is justice in the occupied territory of Palestine. The second thing is that we have observed that at our own level as a regional organization, continental organization, we are doing a lot in the areas of reporting advocacy. We also see the need that there is a need for the United Nations Committee on the Alienable Rights of Palestine to also network with similar regional organizations like the African Union, so that there can be a coalition of different sub-regional organizations coming together to speak with one voice on the issues of Palestine. Then the third issue that we think that needs to be focused on is advocacy's collaboration with other international organizations. And in conclusions, it is important to indicate that just as African continent, we have some issues that we are doing advocacy on. Like, for example, the representative of the African continent on Security Council desk. There are so many issues, but we believe that if together with other interested stakeholders, can also join hands together with the African Union, we can continue to speak with one voice. And finally, it will also be necessary for the committee to begin to think of having a collaboration meeting of this nature with the African Union, so that in addition to having this type of meeting here, the African Union policy-making organs can also be represented to make a presentation and also look for how a strategy can be put in place, so that the position that is put together at this fora can actually be taken as one of the positions of the African Union to the United Nations. I think I will just stop at this end because of our time. I thank you.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Ikubaje, for this very passionate presentation. You have opened up, you have widened the perspective of cooperation between this committee that had organized this Dakar meeting with the OIC, but also with African Union and beyond. I'm sure that your co-panelists have taken good notes of your presentation for them to see how, after this meeting, to continue strategizing together, including civil societies of individual countries and also African civil society to help Palestine exercise its full inalienable rights. Le prochain orateur.
The next speaker on our list. Now, I will find it difficult to introduce him because I've known him for a very long time. That's why I'll be very brief in my introduction. It's Professor Babacar Diop. He's a professor of history at the Literature and Social Sciences Department of University Cheikh Anta Diop in Dakar. And he's also a member of the Senegal-Palestine Solidarity Association. Mr. Diop has published several articles on literature and has addressed many conferences in Europe, the US, and Africa. Since 2007, he has been the chairman of the Pan-African Association for Literacy and Adult Education. Now, there are many other hats that he wore, and it would be very, very difficult to list them all, and that is why I will give him the floor immediately. So, Professor Diop, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to, first of all, thank you as chairman of the Committee for the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. Thank you and your team for having associated the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to this event, and I congratulate you for the good organization of this conference. I would like to also congratulate and greet my friends from this Senegal-Palestine Solidarity Committee Association, and I encourage them to continue the battle for the liberation, for the release of the Palestinian prisoners, but to continue fighting to make of East Jerusalem the capital city of Palestine. And in my presentation, in the annexes, I have published I've added a number of statements that we made a few months ago. I would like to greet His Excellency, the Ambassador of Palestine, and all those who are present in this room. Now, I thank you, dear colleagues, for having appointed me to make a presentation at this conference. Now, the honor bestowed on me is can be explained, first of all, by the fact that I'm a Senegalese, and my country has for a long time played an important role in the support to the Palestinian cause. And His Excellency, Mr. Falilou Khan, a former diplomat, recalled that Senegal was the first country to have accepted to have a PLO office open in Dakar with the rank of embassy, ambassador given to its representative. And in a book that he published of a bird's eye view on Senegalese diplomacy from 1960 to date, this diplomat, experienced diplomat, articulates the Senegalese dynamic to the what happens in Africa. Yesterday he was here, he was in this room, and I talked to him, and we talked about the time when Yasser Arafat cried here in Dakar. So therefore, it is a long history indeed. And Dr. Siré Ly, may his soul rest in peace, who was chairing the NGO Association Islamic Solidarity, recalled at an international conference whose proceedings have just been published a month ago on the life and work of Professor Amadou Mahtar Mbow, former director of UNESCO, the active role played in that international institution by Senegal, whose national was at the head of that organization. And in 1969, there was fire at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and this is what ushered the creation of the Organization of the Islamic Conference in '69. He recalled that in 1970, Amadou Mahtar Mbow convinced the Lebanese, Jordanian, and Syrian government to take responsibility for the education of Palestinian students through the United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestine refugees in Near East. This cultural action of Senegal for the Palestinian cause, which is an extension of all the policies implemented by government from President Senghor to date at the time of the second post-independent change under the regime of President Macky Sall, who is chairing NEPAD and ECOWAS presently. Well, what I want to say in brief is that through its history and geography, Senegal cannot but bear a responsibility which is for a part of the continent's womb. Now, I would just like to recall a few additional memories. My friend, my Egyptian friend, my colleague, Jeremy Sharawi, whom I met just 2 weeks ago in Marawi, where we were for a Codestria meeting, recalled a number of things. And this is what Sharawi says. He is the head of the center, Afro-African Center for a Research Center in Cairo. This is what he says, and I quote, "I remember that as a researcher in an important institution, I had received instructions to collect all the relevant information on the event, particularly on the role of Great Britain as a protector and instigator." And yesterday we talked about 1948 and what happened at that time. Now, on that day, I felt at the same urge at the President's office and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Minister of Foreign Affairs was instructed to study with Ghana, Algeria, the Casablanca Group, and other the possibility of freezing political relations with Great Britain, which was considered, which was responsible of what was happening in its former colony, Rhodesia. So we thought that the new state was going to sponsor a new type of colonization, similar to that of Palestine, by foreign settlers, and with the upsurge of nationalism in Palestine and the PLO, strong and measures were going to be taken in the following days. Indeed, an agreement was found. And within 2 weeks, 11 African countries broke their relations with Great Britain. All the representatives of liberation movements celebrated that measure, and this was commented by foreign observers who said that when Great Britain was attacking the activists and that the Egyptian forces supported Yemen, Egypt had not followed such a measure. And I indeed sent a deep contrast between those reactions and the limited reaction of African states at the UN General Assembly. He added that Guinea-Conakry was the only African country to have broken its relations with Israel, and there was also a lot of pressure brought to bear by the United States on the African countries. But the main reason of such a behavior was, without any doubt, the attitude of the new regimes vis-à-vis the liberation movements. I'm not going to continue. I will invite you to read what he recalled, all the People's Liberation Movement, what happened, the battles for the arms struggle, and everything that was achieved later on. I will just conclude with another anecdote, because I do remember that with some young nationalists, we were frustrated because of our defeat in this 1967 war of Israel against Egypt. But many liberation movements from Palestine, Guinea-Bissau, Mozambique, Angola, and even Vietnam comforted us somehow. And what I mean by that is that the struggle of the Palestinian people went together with the battles by Frelimo, MPLA, ANC. They all fought to get an observer status at the United Nations, and they also supported each other mutually. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm one of part of a generation. Sharawi is a bit older than myself, which witnessed the fight, supported the non-aligned movements. We were shouting slogans in Paris for free Vietnam. We fought for Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and for the people of Vietnam to have their say. We're saying on the streets of Paris, Nidal, Nidal, Habt al-Nasser. So we will fight up to victory. And we were wearing the Palestinian scarf, the kafir. And we will never insist enough on the support of Africans to Arab struggles. And Professor Samil Amin said that 80% of the people who speak Arabic on from the African continent, history and geography, have woven very strong links between Africans and the people of the Near East and the Palestinians. Professor Ali Mazrui, may his soul rest in peace, who always said that he did not agree with the geography that is separating Africa from the Arab world. This led to a lot of discussion, but he was right. The geography is not the only a science of space. It